Hi, everybody. Celia Waterhouse here. Thank you so much for joining us here at OnPoint Mentors. Today we have Che Marville. Welcome, Che.
Hello. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Now, Che is a CEO of OurMindIsCalm.com. She is a transformational wellness expert, an international yoga and meditation teacher, and a corporate wellness pioneer. Wow. That's a lot right there.
That is a lot. Wow. I'm like, who is that?
Well, you're just going to have to explain all of that in the hour that we have together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had a really dynamic career, so I'm always excited to talk about it because I think there's just so much for each of us to do and create and build and make in this world. And just you shouldn't be defined by anything or anyone else.
Well, I know we're talking today about resilience and transformation. That is a hot topic right now.
Yeah.
And, just trying to help people get through the tough times and having resilience and being able to transform their lives into, something that gives them meaning and purpose. So take it away. Give us some wisdom.
Well, I'll share with you, my experience over 30 years of doing this kind of work and my own personal experience around resilience. And, you are so right. We are in an extraordinary and dramatic time, and it's uncertain and it's unpredictable, and there is no baseline for what we are going through as a global community. And it's the first time in our 100-year history that, and actually really more, that we're all around the world going through a similar experience. And whether we are being impacted economically, or we're being impacted in terms of our employment or the businesses we're building, or our families, or our schools, everyone is being touched by this experience. Whether you wear a mask or you don't wear a mask, whether you believe the science or you don't believe the science, everybody has been affected by what is happening right now. And what's also happening is that we had a concept of what was normal and what we wanted to try to achieve and what we aspire to. And so many of those things have been dismantled. Mm-hmm. And we are all thrown into this big pot of soup that says, kind of remake yourself and do it right now, and also stay safe, stay alive. And it's not like people weren't struggling before 2020. A lot of people had struggles, whether that was emotional, whether that was economic, whether that was, in terms of looking for a different career or building their businesses. It's not like we all were just in la la land going, oh, life is so wonderful. But I do think that this moment, it plants us squarely in the fourth industrial revolution. And the industrial revolution is not, it's not about yesterday. It's digital, it's human, it's AI, it's about adapting, and it's about being resilient. And where the resilience piece is so important for us is that we have to be able to embrace change and also accept that while we are changing and walking forward into this change, we are going to be making mistakes and learning and pushing, and still have to push forward. And so, resilience is not about being happy. I'm a bit unusual in the wellness community. I don't encourage people to be happy. I encourage people to sit with discomfort. That's one of the great values of learning to meditate and becoming more mindful, is that you're learning to sit with the things that are uncomfortable, right, and still walking forward. And most of us are experiencing a life where there's some joy and there's some unhappiness, and they are like parallel streams. And depending on where you are in your life, where you are in your mind and your body, where you are in your human experience, sometimes the joy is not enough. And sometimes the distress is too much. And often when that happens, that's the time when we actually can't afford to give up.
Right.
And so what I try to do is encourage businesses, individuals, and communities to not just not give up, but to bear what is happening and keep walking forward. Because the actual action of moving and continuing to engage actually allows you to come up and create new ideas. It's when we decide we cannot go on any longer that the world starts to get a little bit smaller, especially when we start to move into a state of depression or anxiety. And, that's when, it's really important to look to your doctor, your health practitioner, and not look to them for answers, but look to them for partnership.
Right.
Because often, depression or situational depression or anxiety is also an indication that something's not right in your life, and that and that you need to focus on it. You need to work on it. But we don't have to do that alone. There's a lot of support in our health system to help us, and there's a lot of information out there. So I really encourage people to always look to a health practitioner to get some support around some of the issues of anxiety or panic, and depression. Then the other side is the energy and capacity you need to be able to transform yourself when things are tough, like right now, right? A lot of businesses have been wiped out. A lot of companies and consultants and independent businesses are talking about, how do we pivot? And they're trying to pivot. Mm-hmm. And some of us, the pivot is happening, but it's not happening by choice. And it's not an easy pivot. And that's why it's important to actually cast the net wide and to start looking at all the needs that are around you and look at who your target market was, and then look at who you are, and then say, or ask yourself, actually, and this is a question I ask every single day: am I willing to adapt? Am I willing to adapt? Because that willingness to adapt is different from I'm feeling forced to adapt. And when there's a willingness, when there's a philosophical mindset of I am willing, that changes the kinds of questions you're willing to ask of yourself, right, and that you're willing to ask of your business. So when I work with individuals or I work with teams, I really try to encourage people to start from a position of discovery. Rather than, I need to know the right answer. I need to know how I can change immediately. No, actually, you need to know, what's the lay of the land?
Right.
Who are you? I don't know about you, but I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I mean, the core of me is the same, but some of what I'm doing is profoundly different.
Right.
And how I'm doing it is profoundly different because I've grown, I've evolved. We're all doing that. And what we have to do is to be able to apply this sense of wonder and discovery and willingness to where we are in this moment. And that is the first, that's the ground floor of transformation. That's the ground floor of resilience.
So what practical steps can you advise people? If you had to say, let's get together, I'm going to be working with you as a coach. Here are some practical steps you can do.
Well, I like to break change up into a number of different compartments. So when you're looking at resilience, I think it's almost it's kind of interesting to look at your life as a pie chart or an apple pie. I love apple pie. I've been eating a little too much apple pie. And look at and sort of break that, parse that pie up into different compartments.
Right.
So we were talking earlier about physical activity. I've found that in my life, the more physical I am, the more energized I am. And that doesn't necessarily mean going to the gym, but, walking and running, jumping up and down at my desk,
Right.
jumping up and down in between Zoom calls is useful for getting that vibrational energy moving, getting the heart rate up, which only like just pumps, so much good stuff into our body, right? And gets our heart moving and helps our brain. And so that connection is like a physical connection that is essential to getting the physical body moving.
Right.
So, and then there's hydration, right? And then there's sleep. So those three pieces are essential for your human physical body. And I know this might sound very obvious and even simplistic, but it's essential to say, because especially for us, for those of us who are entrepreneurs, we're so busy that we tend to forget that we need to look after our bodies, right? And so that's one part of the pie. The other part of the pie is our mindset. So our philosophy. And I have clients and team members who are always saying, well, I don't know if I need a philosophy. I'm not like, who am I? And that's actually the question. The question is, who are you? Because so much of what we do, everything that we do, comes from who we are. And can we accept ourselves? Do we understand ourselves? So yes, you have that foundational piece of moving, of hydrating, of trying to induce good sleep patterns. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But then we have to be active and proactive about our philosophy for ourselves. Right? So you'll hear a lot of people talk about goal setting. How can you have goals without having a personal philosophy about your life? What do you believe in? What do you care about? What do you value? What gives you meaning? These four pieces are critical to designing your own philosophy. And you don't have to go to the library. I mean, do people still go to the library? I do sometimes when you want to like hide from the house. I do. I love libraries. You don't need to go to a life coach to figure out your personal philosophy. You can go to a life coach to unpack it,
right,
and create a strategy for it.
Right.
But it's essential that you've done that work, that thoughtfulness about understanding the value and the meaning of your own life. And then when you move from the physical to the mindset philosophy, there's something that is essential for us to look at, and not to wait until there's a crisis, but our emotional well-being. Now notice, I'm not saying job, I'm not saying work, I'm not saying, your finances are first. I'm doing a setup here. Your body, your mind, your heart. Knowing what's happening with your emotional life, knowing what you care about, knowing what you love, knowing what you dislike, right? Like, wellness isn't all about, joy and lollipops and happiness. That's not real life. Real life is that our emotions are an internal system for feedback.
Right.
Our emotions are an internal system for helping us to understand how we are impacted by the external world. And when we can acknowledge the things that are impacting us, then we can know, do I go here? Do I go there? Do I go with this person? Do I go with that person? We can know what motivates us. When you can connect the physical part of you, right? That energy, that engine.
Right.
And the mindset, the philosophy that says, I know what I care about. I know what gives me meaning. with, I understand my heart. I understand what I care about. I understand who cares about me. I understand what stresses me out. Sometimes, especially as entrepreneurs, we are juggling so many things,
Yeah.
right? And one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs experience, a lot of, tough CEOs experience, is anxiety.
Right.
And the first thing that comes up for many people is shame and denial. They don't want to admit that they're experiencing anxiety. They don't want to admit that they're starting to feel, physically uncomfortable about and overwhelmed, right?
Right.
So the denial of their experience. No, this is no, no, no,
I can handle it.
no. It's like, yeah, like you're struggling, but embrace the struggle,
Right.
acknowledge it,
Right.
grab hold of it.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I'm glad you're mentioning this because there's a lot of professionals that are out there that have that, no, I'm fine, I can handle it, but they're not able to because and that's when the anxiety develops. And then what do they do?
Yes. Well, you see, we aren't always educated from a young age about our full humanness. And what I mean by that is we are very achievement oriented beings.
Right.
That's our ancestors, all of us. We come from ancestors. We're here, all of us, because of our ancestors, because somebody else came before us, right? And they survived all sorts and all manner of things.
Yeah.
Right? So that's actually information that says we can survive whatever we're going through. We come from a people that have survived.
Right.
What we are uncomfortable about is that we think that if you are achieving and being successful, you cannot experience anxiety and distress and feelings of overwhelmedness. And what we aren't educated enough about, we talk a lot about it, but we don't actually understand, the science of it,
right,
is sort of how our bodies work, how our brains and our bodies work together, and the kinds of chemicals and hormones we produce when we're under stress. And there's eustress, which is, good stress, and there's distress, right, which can be negative stress. And we're always like sort of, coddling both of them.
right.
And what that is information about when to run and when to stay the course. And this is why, I really encourage team members and clients to focus on the discovery of themselves, understanding themselves, observing themselves, so that they can start to not judge, but notice. You see, this is where the mindfulness piece is so important. When you start to kind of stand back, sit back, and witness, who am I? What am I? What do I care about? What lifts me and what depresses me? And then from that information, from physical activity, from sleep, from hydration, right? From understanding your philosophical positioning, which can change,
Right.
Right? From understanding your emotions, then you get to a place where you start to look at your capabilities. So I really ask people to start doing an audit of their capabilities, not just the things that they are, good at in their vocation, in their work, but their emotional capabilities. I have, you have friends, and they're from all sorts of backgrounds, but you've got the friend that you call when you've got a problem, and they immediately have like 7 solutions, right? Yeah. You've got the friend who, that's the one you call when you really want to pour out your heart, and they're the ones that, you know, they're able to bear it and listen to it. And you've got the friend who you can't talk to them about anything really deep because they just want to go for a run, or they want to go dance, or they're like, let's go for dinner, or let's not even worry about that, let's go shopping or something, you know. And then you've got the friends who say, you know what, I just want to go hiking on a trail, I want to find a really beautiful grass area, and I want to sit under a tree, and I want to meditate with you. Right. And that's what we have inside of us. Right. Inside of us, we have all those people too. And that's us. And it's unconscious. And there are times when we want to go for a run, and there are times when we want to crawl into the bed and put the covers over our head. And there are times when we have the capacity to sit and cross our legs, you know, and be prayerful and be mindful. And these are all parts of ourselves that are capable. You ask the question, you know, what do we do? What do we do? Guess what? Sometimes it's not about doing. It's about non-doing. It's about being. It's about learning to sit with the confusion, right, with the uncertainty, with the discomfort. And the reason you sit is because inside of each of us is a wiser, kinder, more compassionate us. And when that part of us has space, it rises up and it tells us the truth. And everyone has it. Because this is one of the beauties, the intelligence of being a human being. We have everything we need inside. Right. And so what I like to do, and what I've found works with teams and individuals, is when you teach people and you guide them in to learning to create that spaciousness in themselves. The spaciousness to understand, what does my physical body need? The spaciousness to understand, where am I emotionally in this moment? The spaciousness to understand that it's not wrong to be afraid, right? And that right, all these things, all this thinking gets put into our toolbox. And then sometimes we open the toolbox and it's not a bag, but it's this toolbox that unfolds, right? It just unfolds and it keeps unfolding. And there's all these compartments in it. And there's a tool for everything. Yeah. And that you have more than you know.
I love all your analogies and your visuals. I'm going on that hike, and then I'm going dancing, and then I'm just sitting there.
Yeah.
But Che, how do you help the person? Because this is coming up quite a bit for a lot of clients. A lot of people just, you meet, well, you don't meet them on the street anymore because you got to stand back. But people, sometimes it's just easy to say, oh, what do you love to do and all that. But it's harder to answer those questions for that individual. Is like, what is your purpose? What were you put on this earth for? But I think there's a lot of other voices in their heads, the shoulds, right?
Yes.
I should be a good parent. I should be this or that, rather than I should be me. So how do you clear the clutter in people's heads of those other voices to make them authentically them?
It's a brilliant question. And, it's the question that we all are grappling with. And I think that, number one, most of us run away from that question and have spent years, decades running away. And for many of us, we have who we are, and it's uncomfortable to say, but sometimes who we are is a response to where we've come from, our families of origin, the culture we grew up in, the school we went to, the friends we had. And I don't mean that you become exactly like who you came from, but sometimes we become what we think others want us to be, or we react to what we think others wanted us to be, and we haven't spent the time. In fact, many of us won't give ourselves the time to really embrace not knowing.
Right.
I mean, like, how do you become a doctor? How do you become the CEO of a company? How do you build a technology or, or an app if you don't know who you are and what you want? The first thing you say in business is, who's your target? What's your target? Like, how can you do anything if you don't know? You don't know, you don't not know forever, but there is a space that we have to carve out for ourselves of being comfortable not knowing and asking many questions. I used to ask clients 15 years ago, I used to ask them the question, what's your purpose? And what I discovered was that was not a good question because that question assumes that someone knows that they have purpose. That question assumes that that person has thought about that word and that word has value to them, right? Sometimes some of us are remaking ourselves. We sometimes come from places where we've been told we have no value. And if you have no value, how do you have purpose? So what I like to do is ask people to think about the things they care about. And then there's another piece, looking at the patterns of your behavior without judgment. If you can start to ask yourself, what have I done that I liked? How have I lived? Am I someone who's late all the time? Right? Like, there's a lot of judgment about lateness, but sometimes lateness is a phenomenal subject area because it actually tells you what you don't want to do. Sometimes you're late because you're overwhelmed and you're packing too much in. Sometimes you're late because you're not actually doing what you care about doing. So you're being dragged to everything, right? And it's not until you start to think about it that way, not from the positioning of judgment, but from the positioning of opening.
Right.
We do not, I'm just going to say, we do not spend enough time with ourselves, on our mind, on attributing value to the things we do. Because if we did, we would start to look at the patterns of our behavior. Mm-hmm. When have I said yes and I wanted to say no? When have I taken on too many things when I shouldn't have, when I should have been really focused on my own business, right? When have I built businesses for others and left mine to kind of make itself into something? Right? And this is why, the physical piece, the emotional piece, the philosophical piece are really critical to getting to the action that changes your behavior. Because when I talk about patterns, I'm actually talking about habitual behavior. And it's hard to change your habitual behavior if you don't know the origin of the behavior. Right? And if you and the way things have sort of operated over many decades in terms of self-improvement and personal development, and this is no disrespect to, all of the different leaders out there trying to encourage people and raise people up and coach them to do things. It works for a lot of people. However, what I've observed is that the real change is not somebody shaking you and saying, come on, you got to do it. You got to do it. You can do it. You can do it. That does give you energy, right? But not necessarily long term. What really gets you is when inside you understand on a fundamental level your value and how you bring that forward through your behavior. And then you start to move, you look at the patterns of your behavior. And then when you start to look at patterns of behavior, then you get insight into what you actually care about, what you actually value. And that's where your own personal and professional mission statement are really, really essential. And writing it down is really essential, because when you write, it puts your brain into action. You have to almost justify before you're writing in your mind what you actually say. That so because your body and your mind know what you're saying to be true or untrue. And sometimes we are so willing to believe in other people. We're so willing to champion and cheerlead other people's causes that we don't spend the time really focused on ourselves and understanding our own values. That's what gets you to purpose. Purpose is what gets you to goals. Goals is what gets you to a pattern of behavior that produces a result. A result can be good or bad. But when you have a pattern and when you can look at it, you can actually be very focused on the nuance of your behavior and how you change things. And then it's not so overwhelming.
Wow. And do you use the same kind of framework working with huge corporations and the purpose of a corporation?
So I don't use the same framework. I use different frameworks for corporations and different kinds of corporations. It depends on their culture. I have about 7 frameworks that I like to work with, that they're sort of like foundational, because a company that is a beverage and alcohol company is not the same as a not-for-profit that is serving people in a marginalized community.
Right.
The purpose they have in terms of being successful and generating revenue or generating profit, that the desire is the same, but the mechanism and the why is different.
Right.
And so it's very important as an organization that you understand the relationship between the culture that you want to achieve, the mission and the target group you're focused on, and who your actual group of employees or team members are. Sometimes companies, there's this incongruence between who you've hired and what you want to achieve. And so it's really essential that those two things come together. And sometimes the mission of an organization can only be, like, it's driven in 2 ways, from the top and from the bottom.
Right.
And so, yes, there is that North Star that everybody's going towards. But it's really important for the leadership to understand who's in our community, in our organization. How do I motivate them? What motivates them? What interests them? What engages them? And then you bring those things together, and then you create a mission that everyone can get behind organically and naturally. For an individual, it's a bit different. There's a psychological piece to individuals. I mean, there is one obviously in a corporation, but it's different. But there's a psychological piece in individuals that's very important to sort of unpack for individuals in a way that helps them to feel like they are becoming empowered from the unpacking, that the discovery of their pain, which
Right.
is often where there is opportunity for massive growth, is actually a good thing. It's that we don't have to hide from the things that hurt us. That in the things that hurt us, there are spaces that allow us to grow and evolve and develop. And it's often through incredible trauma, and despair and pain that we are able to find the capacity and the energy and, dare I say, the resilience to create something new, whether it's in our personal life or it's in our business life.
Right.
And this pandemic right now has thrown, the whole world into a major anxiety attack. Even the word pandemic, every time I hear it, I think panic, right? It's like everyone, get to the panic room. And the reality is that it's not time to become panicked. Actually, this is a time for enormous calm.
Right.
This is a time for presence of mind, so that we know what we're doing and that we can be really clear before we do it.
Right.
Whether that is, where we're going in our day-to-day life, the choice, of wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, the choice of who we spend our time with, the choices that we're making about where we start to orient our business, right? Who we are going to start working with, who we are currently working with. This is a time to be very clear and steady and constant and consistent. The world might be spinning, but we don't have to be. The other piece of this is that in the midst of this panic, um, there are, some people will say to you, well, you know what, I'm okay. I've pivoted. I'm trying to keep the kids safe. I'm very organized. Everybody's okay. Business is doing okay. We're just staying the course.
Right.
I'm not really that impacted, and thank God for that, right?
Yeah.
And then there's other people who are like, my life's been thrown upside down. I've been laid off. My boss came in and said, I'm sorry, but I can't keep you. I can't pay my mortgage, or I can't pay the mortgage for my office. I have to lay employees off. My kids are scared. I am feeling incredible anxiety right now. I don't know how to move forward. I mean, we're all on this spectrum.
Right.
I would say that I was up to June 2020, I was pretty steady. I was, I thought my husband, the kids, we had reorganized. We had come up with a new design. We had this theory that we're on this great adventure, and so most of it we don't like, but we're going to stay the course.
Yeah.
My mom was in her own independent apartment, and I was taking food for her every few days and making dinner and doing physical distancing, right? And we were, okay. And then the trauma of my life happened on June 20th, 2020. My mother got sick. I took her, got her to the hospital, and actually called an ambulance because I was talking to her on the phone. I talked to her every day, multiple times a day. That's a whole other story about talking to my mother multiple times a day. And she wasn't feeling well, and she was having some trouble, breathing. And I called an ambulance. I met the ambulance at the house. I saw my mom. She was sitting up in the on the stretcher. She was taking some oxygen. I said, Mom, you're going to be fine. The paramedic said, yes, she's going to be fine. My mom said, yes, I'm going to be fine. I'll see you later. 14 days later, my mother died. She had contracted COVID, and it was a street fight, and she fought. She was a nurse. She was 84. An incredible woman, had immigrated from South America to England to Canada, and trained midwife. I mean, I could go on. She was really an extraordinary woman, raised 4 kids, divorced mom on her own. And somehow she contracted COVID, and had bronchitis the year before. Had an underlying, she had underlying heart issue, but was like a well person, like cooked dinner for me on June 1st of 2020. And I didn't see my mom again. And I can't even believe I'm saying those words, because my mother was a really dynamic human being. And the reason I share this is that in this pandemic and in this new world that we're living in, we don't always know what's going to happen. And we have to rely on some underlying capabilities in us to be able to reset ourselves when the hardest and most difficult things happen, and know that we still have to go on. You see, for me, I had a parent who was my one parent who had encouraged me from the time I was very young to have faith, to care about others, to care about myself, and to invest in the hard skills, which are for her communication, empathy, compassion, caring. And those are the skills that are carrying me right now. So yes, I am grieving my mother. She wasn't just my mother, she was my friend. But I know she's also saying, bear up and keep going. Find the grit and keep going. And that's what all of us have to do as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, as leaders in our organizations, as leaders in our home. We have to be able to find the grace to take some space, to care for ourselves, and yet forge on. Because the reality is, those of us who are well are here, and we're well, and we're alive, right? And we can't allow this pandemic, this unknown bacteria, to destroy our lives.
Right.
Like in each of us, there's, we're 2 million years old. So we gotta pull something, we gotta
Right.
and we gotta dig deep, and even, and I like I know that I'm at the beginning of my grief process, and but because she and I had such an incredible friendship, I feel her presence in my life, every single day. And I know that she'd be really pissed off at me, excuse the language, if I just crawled into my bed and said, I give up.
Yeah.
No. Like, we're just beginning. And I mentioned at the beginning, we are in the fourth industrial revolution. And so many of us are afraid, and we're concerned, and rightfully so. But we forget that we come, all of us, no matter who we are, no matter where we're from, no matter what we speak, no matter what class, what language, what it doesn't matter.
Right.
We are human beings. We are hardwired to succeed. And we are hardwired to take all the things that are hard, put them in that toolbox, and then open it up, lay it out, and start saying, okay, what tool do I have for what problem?
Right.
And take the hammer, and take the screwdriver, take the sandpaper, right? Find and be unafraid to find new skills. Right. Because we are built for skills. We are built for learning and adapting. And as soon as you're willing to do that, the world opens up, people show up, opportunity shows up. I promise you, the things that I am doing right now, I didn't actually think I was going to be doing them 6 months ago. I mean, in fact, if you said to me a year ago, all of your training is going to be online, all of your coaching is going to be online, you would only do your meetings online, I would have said, no way. Are you kidding? I love being in front of people. I love working with people. I want to do a headstand with somebody. And then while they're on headstand, I want to talk about their goals. I'm like all about being in the human experience. Guess what? Now the human experience is through video.
Right.
And it means that you have to tell the truth. And as a guide, as a facilitator, as a trainer, I'm calling on 30 years of experience now to open my toolbox and say, let's see your toolbox and let's see what new tools we can apply to the new world we're in so that we can do a reset and everyone can do it.
Che, thank you for sharing that personal story. I know we had a short conversation yesterday about it, and I was hoping you would go into the story because it was so beautiful how you explained it yesterday. And I know that the people that are listening today are really going to take a lot from it and learn from you and see your mother through you and feel her through you.
Yeah.
Because that's who's coming out, right?
Oh.
And so thank you for sharing it. And yesterday, yeah, you used the word, we were talking about transformation and you used the word beautiful.
Yeah.
To talk about grief.
Yeah. I'm glad you're reminding me of that. I mean, I think the other thing that I'm thinking about grief every single day, right? But and it's not like I haven't had people pass away before, but obviously when it's your parent and that you've had a very integrated relationship with, and transformational relationship with, it is transforming to lose them. And what I've discovered is that grief has, like love, many, many rooms. And there are parts of the grief that I'm experiencing that are deeply sorrowful and deeply painful, right? But then there's this other piece that keeps showing up that is this unfolding beauty. I have people, my mom passed away on July 4th, 2020. And since that day, there is not a day that I have not had someone call to say, I just heard your mother was my friend. I met a gentleman a few weeks ago in my mom's apartment complex, and he said, Che, your mother was my friend for 25 years. And he said, I don't have a lot of friends. And she was my friend. And so when I hear that, not only do I hear her voice and her story, but I hear about the value of how to survive, the value of friendship as a tool in resilience, that we don't live in this world alone, and that friends come in all shapes and sizes and forms. And it's friendliness that helps us, take a chance, build a relationship, open up to something new. That's the beauty. That's the piece that I wasn't thinking about before. And, as a meditator, and all I would say about meditation is that every day it's new. It doesn't matter how many years you meditate, and it's a tradition. The wisdom traditions of meditation are so incredibly valuable. But one of the things, in the Buddhist tradition, there's a lot of talk about friendliness, maitri, about this idea of being open. And in the death of my mother, I knew that she was an incredible, extraordinary person. Not perfect. None of us are. She never claimed to be, never tried to be. But her friendliness, her capacity, the things that she gave, the things that I'm discovering about her that I didn't know, that has been beautiful. And I would not know that without this grief. And yes, would I rather her be here than know that? Yes. But am I grateful to have this with me now? Yes. Yes. And so I say to, all the people that I get to work with, that I have the privilege of accompanying them on their path, I say to them, our struggle is hard, but there's also beauty in it, because it asks us, the struggle asks us to dig a little deeper. And in that deepness, in that valley, there is so much more that we do not know until we go there.
What was your mother's name?
Claudette.
Claudette.
Yes.
Claudette.
Like Claudette Colbert.
Claudette. Claudette, thank you so much for bringing Che Marville into this world. Just so beautiful. What would you say to her today?
Oh gosh, I talk to her every day. I'd say thank you. We also talk a lot in our society about, sort of the ideal family, or, nuclear families. And, I have the privilege of having a partner that I happen to be deeply in love with. And we have 4 kids, and we, and our life is perfectly imperfect. But I came from 2 parents, who got divorced right before I, actually when I was quite young, like I was 1. And so I came at the end of their marriage. And I grew up with my mother, and she was my one parent. And I have to tell you, my mom, she never spoke poorly about our dad. And she created a life that was full. And it was never about, oh, I'm a divorced parent and all I have is, what I'm doing. No, she always presented the world as though it was big, as though it was vast, and that there was lots of opportunity and things for us to do, and that there was so much to be grateful for. So I ended up having a parent who was a fully alive, fully awake, fully engaged, included you in the struggle. And it made me, from a very young age, because I started working when I was, volunteering when I was 13 and 14 in hospitals, it made me a person who was very proactive. When you have a parent, when it's a single parent, you as a child, you have work to do in the house. Not like my kids. Don't bring that up. You have responsibilities. You have to be accountable. I remember my mom sometimes, when she was working as a nurse, she got a few extra shifts, and after school, I'd take the bus and I would meet her at the hospital where she worked. And I would, be in the break room, until her shift was over, because she was working late and she didn't want us to be at home alone. She didn't want me to be home alone. You start to see as a young person that there's all these different dimensions to working. And so I am so supremely grateful to her that she didn't try to sugarcoat it, but she shared her life. She made life opportunistic. She made life an experience. And so now I know, this is the resilience piece. It's like, these are muscles. I know in the grief, in the tears, and there are lots of them, that I have the muscles, I have the bones to go forward. And just as she lived, I continue to live and do things and make things and create things and design things. It is my great honor to be her daughter.
And what would Claudette say back to you?
Oh, you talk way too much. So I think she'd be proud of me. She'd be really proud of me. She'd say, keep going. She'd say, keep going. She'd say, don't stop. Yeah. Do not stop. Keep going. That's what she'd say. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Che, this has been such, I'm not going to say delightful, but yes, delightful and beautiful.
Thank you.
Right? A beautiful celebration of life, a beautiful celebration of how to handle some of the challenges that life throws us, and having resilience and being able to transform through it. And you certainly, I mean, with just a few minutes have transformed us. It's like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it.
We can do it. We can all do it. We have it in us. We're built. You know what? No one, you know what they should be saying in the media? They should be saying, we are built for this.
Yes.
We don't need to be afraid.
Right.
We need to educate ourselves. We need to understand the science, right? And then we need to build systems for how we traverse this challenge and this difficulty right now. We're built for it.
You know, we're going to have to get back together and have another conversation on, well, you know, I love the topic of resilience, and we talked about different frameworks for different types of corporations versus individual. But I'd love to talk about resilience in a community, in a nation, and in a planet, right?
Yes.
And the frameworks we can create.
Yes.
And think bigger of how do we create resilience and transformation and adaptability.
I'd love to do that. And I'd love to add to that, what do we have in common as a human family? We have this earth. We have this planet. And if we all start to think about that, that's where the jobs are. That's where the business is. That's where, you know, the opportunity for loving one another, being connected, understanding our relationship to one another. That's where it is. That's where our health is. I firmly believe that.
And that's where our purpose is.
Yes, yes.
Each individual and collective purposes, right?
That's right. That's absolutely the truth.
Oh my gosh, Che, that's going to be a fantastic discussion when we get to those subjects, right? That's the big think tank stuff that just blows your mind, right?
Yes, yeah. And we're built for it. We're ready for this. I mean, like the fact that we can meet online and continue to do our work, the fact that we get the opportunity to rethink how so many things are done, the fact that there are people growing food and farming is more important now than ever before. Oh
my gosh.
I'm amazed by what we're in right now. I'm amazed.
Absolutely. And you know, it's funny, Che, we just met yesterday and I want to go out and have a drink with you.
Oh, me too. I'm already seeing us having champagne and just growing and doing things together and embracing, cultivating.
Yeah.
You know, we all of us, when we show up, this world is going to be better.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining our team here, because we need mentors like you to help all of us get through the challenging times, and not just this year, 2020. There's always going to be challenging times.
Always.
And you're going to be helping us fill our tool belt with new tools.
Yes.
Some sandpaper, new tools, some drills, some, you know. But you know, overall, we've got a big toolbox.
Yes.
It's already, our tools are already there. We just know how to use them.
Exactly. And we just got to practice them.
Practice makes perfect.
Right? Like that beautiful piano in the background. You've got to play it. That's how we get better. So
yeah, that thing's collecting dust a little bit. Well, I mean, I did play it a little bit yesterday. But
oh, see? Yeah.
All right, Che, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I really, really enjoyed our conversation and getting to know you. And I cannot wait for some of our other discussions that we're going to have in the future.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so grateful.
All right.
I'm grateful.
Thanks. Bye.
You. Bye.